Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito was flying the American flag upside down at his house in the immediate wake of the January 6th insurrection. And that's not all. He was also flying a Christian nationalist flag at his home here in my state of New Jersey. Dude's got a freak flag fetish, huh? And Republicans want us to think that this is all totally normal and not something we should be talking about or upset about at all. And here's the thing about that. Yeah, fuck that. Because the guy who apparently didn't know not to fly the American flag upside down at his home has helped force a reality upon this country where there were 64,000 plus pregnancies resulting from rape in just 14 red states in less than 2 years. The guy who blamed his own personal desecration of our flag on his wife and his neighborhood being political has helped force a reality upon us where 25 million plus women do not have the access to abortion in this country anymore. The guy who flew a flag in support of the very election denial he was considering ruling on, and the very election deniers who attacked the Capitol a week earlier, is going to help decide if hospitals can in fact leave a woman to die before performing an abortion. He's going to help decide if domestic abusers can have their guns back, if medication abortion is legal or illegal, if access to contraception can be taken away, if more of the rights we continue to enjoy now can be stripped from us, if a traitorous madman who incited a violent attack in an effort to subvert the will of the people can execute his rivals and get away with it. A man not capable of making the right call as it pertained to flying our flag in a violation of our flag codes. A man who knows he is supposed to remain unbiased and impartial and yet consistently chooses otherwise. A man who can't do or won't do the ethical thing when it comes to ruling on cases he knows he shouldn't, represents 1/9 of the power of the highest court in this country and is tasked with helping to make kinds of decisions so grave, so impactful, they have the power to drastically change lives, alter the course of history, and shape the future itself. But he doesn't know enough not to fly the flag upside down at his home? No, he knows. He knows damn well. He just doesn't give a fuck. Changing gears a little bit, I am so excited for this episode of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast because it is completely different from anything else I've ever done or you've ever heard from me. For real. This week's guest is Adam Berry. Adam Berry is the co-star and executive producer of the hit television series Kindred Spirits and author of the new book, Goodbye, Hello, Processing Grief and Understanding Death Through the Paranormal. I have been fascinated by ghosts and the paranormal for a very long time after my own personal experience, which we talk about on this episode. And when I saw that Adam had a new book out and it was about processing grief and understanding death through this lens, I knew I had to ask him to please come and talk to me because these are questions I have all the time. It is such an incredible book, and it takes you on a journey from goosebumps to crying to laughing and learning and considering the universe in all sorts of new and dynamic ways. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that this book changed my perceptions on ghosts forever. And now I just want to learn more. But you've got to get the book and you got to listen to the podcast or watch the podcast because Adam is amazing. And you have to check out his socials too, because his Instagram stories are so good. I feel like I've made a friend forever, and I just want to know more. And as it is Memorial Day weekend, I also want to acknowledge the men and women who've served this country so valiantly throughout our history. It is a day of solemn contemplation over the cost of freedom. It is a day to pause and reflect upon the many service members who risked and ultimately lost their lives fighting on behalf of the United States. We honor them and their sacrifice by maintaining the democracy they fought and died for. Enjoy the weekend. Please take a moment to give that some thought, as I'm sure you will, and I will as well. And I will see you next time. Welcome to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast, Adam Berry. Hi, Adam.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you right now. My hairs are already standing up, but I love, okay, everybody knows you most likely from Ghost Hunters and Kindred Spirits. You're the host of Kindred Spirits. I'm sure people who are familiar with, the paranormal and the investigations of the paranormal know you from that. I do
Right.
as well. But what I really want to talk to you about today is your book, which is incredible, called Goodbye Hello. Can you hold it up for me? Because my hard copy
Oh
is,
yeah.
because I think a paranormal experience took mine. Goodbye Hello, Processing Grief and Understanding Death Through the Paranormal. Oh my gosh, where do we start? I I mean, I laughed, I cried, I was terrified, like literally my hair is standing up. I was listening with my son. He was like, we were just making faces at each other, a whole bunch. This is an incredible, incredible book. Thank you for
Thank
writing
you.
it. Let's
Thank
start
you.
with why did you write it? And also after that or before that, however you want to do it, how did you get started as a paranormal investigator?
Okay, so let's answer the second question first.
Okay.
How does one get started as a paranormal investigator? Everyone's a little bit different. My journey was I was fascinated with ghosts as a kid. I enjoyed all things spooky. I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 83. So my childhood from the 80s and the 90s was full of like all of the best horror films from the 70s and then Ghostbusters and then Are You Afraid of the Dark and like pop culture ghosts, right? I was obsessed with all of that. I was obsessed with books about ghosts. And as I got older, I realized or I stumbled upon the idea of investigating. I didn't know you could go look for ghosts. I thought experiences just happen to you and then they're paranormal experiences. And then your house may be haunted, but the idea of looking for them was so foreign to me until I realized that you could. And so I just started doing it. My husband and I, we were dating at the time, and we were living on the Cape in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And in the winter, there's like nothing to do really at all. So we would go out and look for ghosts. We would just go search for the paranormal, and we started our own little team. And the rest is history. I mean, the rest is pretty much history because it just one thing led to another, led to another. I don't think I had a choice. I think I was maybe right place at right time, but like I think the universe chose me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing this for oh God, 16 years now, right? And through those 16 years, I've had tons of experiences and I've met a lot of families who have activity in their house. I've talked to a lot of people. And the one thing that no one really talks about in the, I guess, pop culture paranormal world is that what actually is a ghost? A ghost is someone, I believe, a ghost is someone who lived on this earth just like you and I. And so, if that is real and if that is true, why are we afraid of it? Like, and why are they here? And so, I've been dealing with those kind of topics since I started investigating ghosts, and I wanted to write a book that could help us better understand what happens after we die, especially when we've lost someone really close to us. What happens to them? How can our grief change or evolve based on the paranormal, based on a belief that we do live on after this life in one way or another, um, and our own mortality. Like it's one thing that we're very good at not thinking about. We're very good at as humans to not think about the ultimate end. And I think sometimes you have to talk about it, and sometimes I mean, it's whatever. And so I wanted to write something like that connected a lot of us to a topic that is pretty broad in a different way than it had done before, I guess.
And I love that you did that because I'd never, like you said, I'd never given any of that any thought before. For me, there were like boxes, there was the box of grief and loss. And then there
Right.
was the box of like ghosts and pop culture ghosts and my own ghost experience or ghost experiences. And all of those things were sort of in their separate spaces. And what you do is so well in this book as you kind of tie them together. You weave them together where you start to realize, oh, wow, this kind of illuminates my perspective on this in ways that I never expected. And one of the things
Mhm.
that you do, two things actually that resonated the most with me, which were so like literally life-changing, was, and you talk about this often in the book, it's a strange way to say it for me, but you humanize
Mhm.
ghosts, right? So like I know they're human entities in the well, they're not human in a body sense, but they are
Right.
people, you know, or former people. I don't know, they're spirits, right? So it's like,
Right. Right.
but you humanize them in a way where you're like, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel a connection to this random spirit I don't have any experience with, but you went into it with that evolved over time for you, and that helped you with your investigations, and it helps illuminate for me that perspective, because it's one I've never had, because I'm always like, ghosts are scary. Like, I don't want to
Hmm.
think about why they're there, or what may have happened to them,
For
or
sure.
right, all of those things. So like you literally changed my whole perspective on seeing ghosts as personalities that
Right.
existed in this world, and that they have needs and wants and goals and sadness and feelings and frustrations and all of those things. It never ever occurred to me. Never. I was just knew angry, vengeful ghosts, right? Or
Yeah.
like strange,
Yeah. Yeah.
spooky,
Yeah.
scary
Well,
ghosts.
and the reason why I think a lot of people think those on those same lines as you do is that it is scary. It is a little terrifying to interact with something that you cannot see or hear often, that like all of a sudden, something flies across the room, or you hear knocks or footsteps or a disembodied voice, a moan, and your house is haunted. It is scary because you're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. Um, but once you start realizing that that is a person, he or she or someone, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, someone who lived, it's easier to it's easier to sort of calm your own fears, and also try to figure out like why they would still be around. Like, what is the reason? There has to be a reason, right? But I think a lot of people are afraid of ghosts because it can be scary. I mean, it knocks in the night. They are scary.
Right. And something you talk about more than halfway through the book, our brains are not really, we're not using that part of our brain, which
Mm-hmm.
we can get into a little bit later, but like where that experience would seem to make any sense to us, right? Like our
Right.
rational brain, the conditioned brain is like, these are things that are foreign to me. I can't process. They're very, very
Mm-hmm.
scary. So that, again, another thing that evolves over the book is that you get to this place where you're like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. But the other big theme of the book, obviously, what it's about really is processing grief and using the paranormal to help get there, which was something that was so incredibly helpful to me. I've lost both my parents. I've lost my brother. This was very cathartic in that way, because again, it was just in this sort of box. But you talk about, where they might be or not be, or why I might want to reach out to them or want them to reach out to me and they're not, and that they're ultimately okay. There is this
Mm-hmm.
theme throughout the book where a lot of, the paranormal entities that you encounter want to convey that message. And for me, looking at like the loss of my dad in particular that way, and knowing he's
Mm-hmm.
not reaching out because I always think he's not a sentimentalist, but he's probably okay. And
Yeah.
that gave me so much peace of mind that I was sobbing at one point listening to you, because I listened to the audio version, listening to you. I think it was John. I think you were talking about John. I forget which one now at the moment, but I was sobbing. That was so
Mm-hmm.
cathartic for me. And I thank you for that. And I think that that's really something beautiful in this book.
Yeah. So the idea of losing a loved one is not an easy thing to swallow. Like, it's something that happens. We have to deal with it, and people deal with it in lots of different ways. People look to religion, right? They look to however they were. I was brought up Southern Baptist, so in that religion specifically, you go to heaven or you go to hell. Most people are saying they went to heaven. you know, no, no. And so they're in heaven, and they say, I will see them again one day. We will all be together again one day, and that gives them hope. Well, the paranormal does the same thing. I mean, this book was written for people who believe in ghosts and people that don't believe in ghosts, right? There's lots of things you can take from it. But the idea of a spirit existing on this earth for whatever reason is something that's popularized by paranormal investigation and experiences that people have. And it is another way to view your loved ones if they are still around, right? And when they're not still around, like you said, your dad never came and hasn't reached out to you. And to me, that is okay, because it means he's fine. He doesn't need anything else. There's no unfinished business. You might have thought you needed it more than him, but he might have went to see somebody else. Like, it's a, I don't know how it works, like, obviously. But from their perspective, it's almost like, you're good. You're good. You're going to be okay. I'm okay. My journey's continuing. I'm done with this world, So I like to talk to people about when I talk to people about ghosts and investigation, the first thing out of people's mouths are like, what's the scariest thing you've ever experienced?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a great question, but I want to sort of move the conversation on to like, have you ever met someone that talked about heaven? Have you ever met someone that told you what it's like on the other side? Have you ever met anyone that was refusing to go to the other side because they were scared of what might happen? And those questions come up all the time in our investigation. It's just never talked about because people want to know, what's the creepiest thing, the scariest thing? Yeah. Do you believe in demons? Have you ever gotten possessed? And you're like, I don't think so. I hope not.
No, that is what's so fascinating is you shine a light on this in such a beautiful and really human way. And you said in the book, that was an evolution for you too. You went back to one interaction very early on. I think maybe it was in Provincetown where you said, I did this that way then, where it was more transactional. And what you realize now is that what your approach is to try and tap into a connection with whomever it is that is occupying these spaces, and that human connection that you're trying to establish, it can identify what it is that they're there maybe to do, or you know what I mean, they finally feel like someone hears them or sees them, and that's like, I think that's such an interesting, beautiful approach.
It's totally fine to go out and look for ghosts, right, and have an experience. That is totally fine, and that's what I used to do all the time, and I still do it. If I'm doing an event or something where I'm teaching others about paranormal investigation, I always bring up the human element, but those people are there to have experiences, or they've had an experience in their life at some point, and they sort of want to see if it's for real. Like, can they have another experience? And so, yes, you will ask a spirit to knock on something. And I think what you're talking about is, I knocked on a door and I said, I was at a grave site, and there was a like a crypt or a big tomb, and there was a metal door, and I knocked on it, and I was going, hello, because I didn't know what I was doing. And when I was recording it with my voice recorder, and when I played it back, I heard someone, and I say someone, not anyone that was there, on the recording, said, help me. And though I remember thinking, oh, this is the coolest thing. I caught it. I caught this, right? What did I catch? I think this is a piece of evidence. Like, this is might be a ghost. Like, this is cool. This is awesome. And then when I look back on that now, the two words, help me. No one just says, help me. If I was knocking and I said, hello, they should have said, hello, or how are you? Or stop knocking, you obnoxious kid. But instead, they say, help me. And, I think about that, and I've been back there. I've been there back, I've been to that same spot before. And I just think there was something about that spirit that needed something in that moment that was like, oh my God, this person is looking for someone like me, help me. And then I didn't help them. And it's sort of like, it makes me upset at that younger version, but that's why we evolve, and that's why we learn, and that's why we keep growing. And so nowadays, if a spirit says help me, my thing is, okay, what can I do for you? Like, how can I help you? And we try to figure out what we can do to sort of give them any sort of peace on the other side,
which is incredible. And there's so many stories in the book where that takes place, starting with the nurses, where and you mentioned, I believe you mentioned religion. I know you do in the book often, because there is people often think these are antithetical terms or antithetical, interests, but they're not at all. And right. And in the case of those nurses, one of the things you thought to do, do you want to tell that story really quickly? Like,
sure.
A synopsis of that, because it gave me chills, was super powerful.
So my friend Amy and I were investigating at Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which was a tuberculosis hospital. the nurses wing was a spot, a place that they had not opened yet, and Amy and I got to go in there. And when we were investigating, we kept hearing these knocks, and we realized that the knocks were coming from those that were non-living that were in the space with us. And they knocked. I was like, knock next to my hand, and it would knock right next to my hand. And so it would knock behind us or in front of us, and we transitioned the excitement of getting this activity into okay, one of you speak for everyone. Can you knock as many times as there are people in here? And we counted like 13 or 14 nurses. And at that point, you're like, well, how can we help them? Because we're just collecting evidence. They're all here. They all died, seemingly, I guess, died here, maybe from tuberculosis, from treating other patients. And so it's like, would you like prayer? And there was a solid knock. And so I said a prayer in a non-denominational way. I always say God, because I don't want to pretend like every single one of those nurses were the same religion. Like that's probably not true. So I use God, and I talk about, life and being okay and helping and moving on. And during this moment, during this prayer, it was completely silent. Like they were listening, which as an investigator is very moving, but it's also, to me, it means that the knocks were actually them. It wasn't something being made by water dripping or animals or a tree outside. You know what I'm saying? Like acorns falling or whatever. Because if that were the case, it would still be happening while we're praying. And that prayer lasted maybe a minute. And as soon as we said amen, there was this silence, and then it was just knock, 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 like they were saying thank you. And to me, it's beautiful. It's like that sort of gave them something. They needed it, no matter what reason, whatever their reason why they needed it. Who cares? Who cares? That's what they asked for, and we gave it to them. And I definitely think it helped them.
Again, yeah. And there's a recurring theme too. It's about what they need, because you wouldn't think about that, but also what the living need. And so many of your stories in the book have to do with that, and giving, those of us left behind, a little bit of peace, and or a little bit of an explanation, where, they may have aggressive ghosts and they don't know in their home, and they don't know why. And then once you're able to sort of identify, and then you kind of can figure out what it is that the ghosts maybe want, then the humans here can reconcile that. There's one story in particular where now that ghost has become like a member of the family.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. I mean, you're sometimes we call ourselves ghost therapists, which is absurd, because we're not asking them to literally sit on a couch, but we're trying to help both the living and the dead. And I think doing that makes a better environment for everyone, right? And so Missy was living in this house, and she was terrified because of this activity that she was having it, in the middle of her night. She would see somebody walking around, and we investigated for a while, and we found out that it was the previous owners, and they had come to America from Poland, and they built this house. It was their American dream. And once she realized that it was just this couple that for some reason, they're still in their house, they're still sort of watching over the dream that they had created for themselves, and they not ready to go. She started including them in the family. Like she wanted to change the flooring upstairs, and she goes, so I just sat on the floor and I asked him if he wanted real hardwood, or if it was okay if I could put vinyl plank siding, vinyl plank floors in, and he wanted hardwood, and so we put in the hardwood, which people listening are probably like, that's absurd.
Yeah,
it's absurd. But it makes her feel better, knowing that they care about the house just as much as she does, that she feels like she can work with them. It's not a scary thing anymore. Her sewing room was in the basement, and she could never be down there by herself, and she started going down there by herself. Half of her house was given back to her because she was afraid to do certain things, go to the attic, go to the basement, and no one should live like that. And so, whether you believe in ghosts or not, look at the good that came from it, right? This woman gets her house back, and she gets the fear removed from her life, and she actually feels like, that she can get along with these ghosts and spirits.
Yeah. I think one of the big questions too that a lot of people have, and that you talk about quite often in the book, is why are some people, or why are there people who are ghosts, who become ghosts?
Yeah.
And why do some move on? And why do some
Mhm.
appear only in dreams? And why, again, are some of them seemingly aggressive? But
Mhm.
let's start with the first one, which is, well, if there's heaven and hell, why are there ghosts? Like, why are they here? Why
Right.
are they stuck here? Do they want to be here? And that answer's sort of all over the place, right?
Sure. So if there is a heaven and hell, obviously, I think ghosts stick around for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's unfinished business. Sometimes it is they're looking after the family they left behind. Sometimes they are looking after the empire that they built. You've got like famous haunted hotels like the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, and they say the guy who built it is walking around. So I think that's the most common thing. It's either unfinished business or looking after something or someone. And do I think they have a choice to go on? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I don't think they do. Sometimes they don't know they're dead. Sometimes they die abruptly. They don't know and they're still here. Um, I think the ultimate goal for the individual, whether they believe in heaven, like if they believed in heaven, the ultimate goal is to get to that heaven, right? I talk about in the book where, what if we sort of create our own vision of the afterlife while on earth? So whether you believe, so if you're Christian, you believe that there's a heaven and there's a hell. And so in the end, you will go to one of those places because you believe that. You have manifested that for yourself. Some people believe in nothing, and so maybe there is nothing, right, afterwards. Maybe if you believe in ghosts, maybe you can be a ghost, right, for a bit of time. But I talk about it all in the book in a much broader way because it is it's a really hard topic to dissect from a point of view that isn't like ghosts are real, ghosts are real, ghosts are real, because that's not the point. The point is to give you the information that I know just based on experience and conversation and research and study, and let you make your own decisions about what it could be. And I think that's the best way to do it because I don't want to tell anyone what to believe or how to act, but I want to just share with you my thoughts and feelings on it, and then you come up with your own ideas based on your own personal experiences in life.
Right. And none of this yet is an exactly known science, right? There's so many
Right.
questions still. And one of the things you do so masterfully is you sort of bring this whole conversation into this heightened state of consciousness where you start talking about near-death experiences or death
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And that layer it's going to sound like, again, it's going to sound confusing coming from my brain because my brain is a bit scattered, but like this idea that like we're forever everything all at once, right? And we exist
Yeah, yeah.
forever, and this time that we're in our bodies is only part of that forever. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we leave our bodies, maybe that whatever is next in our forever is that we are a ghost. Maybe we go to a different realm, maybe we go to what our heaven is or our hell. But that is actually a science that is starting to emerge in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what the brain does after like clinical death or whatever the actual
Yeah,
term,
yeah, for
right?
sure.
But see, and I would love you to talk about that more, but
Yeah, yeah.
you bringing us along in the book to this conversation makes perfect sense in relationship to that question I just asked, which is like, well, why are they? You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? But it really makes sense that as an extension of this concept. So if you could talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that heightened sense of consciousness, what if being alive is just part of our forever?
yeah. So there is a great study that I talk about in the book where they're researching near death experiences or death experiences, and the brain doesn't like it's not misfiring when people have near death experience or death experiences where they cross over and they see their family. And there's a lot of similarities, right? Maybe they see a god, or maybe they see angels, or they see family members. There seems to be a place or a part where they cannot cross over, because if they did, they would not get to come back, and then they're told it's not your time, you're going to go back, right? So a lot of people believed that your brain was just misfiring and that you were just having these experiences almost like a dream. But what they're realizing now is that your brain isn't misfiring. Your brain is actually functioning. Your brain is you are actually experiencing the things that you are seeing. It's not a dream. It's actual reality that you're experiencing. And it's almost like your brain taps into this. You tap into this part of your brain that's only available at death, right? At the end of your life. And what I find fascinating about that is, I love to talk about the theory about psychics, because some people believe in psychics, some people don't. I've seen some really insane people that are psychics, and I mean, not insane like they are insane, but like just the things that they say and do, like there's no way that they would know that. And I know them, and I'm really good friends with them, and like it blows my mind. And so for me, what if they are tapping into that part of the brain that we only access at death? And when they tap into that, they get connected to the other realm that we exist, it's so fascinating to me. And I love the idea, energy, matter is never destroyed nor created. Like we have to go somewhere, our energy goes somewhere. And I do love the idea of us leaving this earth or leaving this body, going into some energetic cosmic with everybody else, meshing and molding with every single person. And then maybe you come back, reincarnation. Like maybe you come back to something else, or maybe you don't. Maybe you go on to, I don't know, another dimension. Who knows? Right. But like, I love that idea. And the simple fact is the science is there. The science is real. Your brain is doing something. It is experiencing something. It is not misfiring. So what is that you're experiencing? And that is, to me, paranormal, because it's not normal. It's weird.
Right. I know that there's a lot of crossover between the paranormal world and the UAP world. And my friend Dave Foley is very interested in the UAP world, and he has a podcast about that. He was the first person to bring this near-death experience brain function thing to my attention, and he shared a video with me. I don't know if you've seen it. You probably have. I think the same doctors that you mentioned are in this video, where the decapitated pig's brains are still, they're still. Right. Did you see that? I don't know. But yeah.
I haven't, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like, wait, what? And then what happens? What is the brain doing? And then in your book, you talk about the disinhibition of parts of the brain as the other parts die. It's basically like opening up these other channels that we don't need to tap into in our daily lives, which allow us to experience that, what you said, out of body experience, the tunnel, etc., these other realms, but also, those parts of our brain, some people can tap into them, and that allows them to be psychics, as you said, or to see these entities, or to experience them, or communicate with them,
or to find it easier to meditate. I know a lot of people out there meditate, and they do yoga, and they sit with their thoughts, and the more you do that, especially people that are practicing it every day or every week, and you open yourself up, you feel more rejuvenated, you feel more alert and aware of your surroundings. That's not, that to me is you're tapping into that part of your brain that you don't really access normally. And I know people who are like, I'm not psychic, but I'm really connected to my friends or my friend circle, or like, I just knew something was wrong with her, so I called her immediately, and yes, she wasn't having a good day, or whatever it is. That stuff to me is also the same sort of thing. And when you don't really think about it or realize it, because you're not like, you're not trying to get it up like a superpower. It just sort of happens, and then I think you can work on it. Because my friend Chip Coffey, who's a psychic medium, he's like, everyone's a little bit psychic, and I think you can work on it to like get better at whatever it is. But you don't have to talk to ghosts to be a psychic. You don't have to read the future or predict what's going to happen 2 weeks from now, or tell someone about their love life. You can simply meditate and figure your own shit out, a little bit easier, which is totally perfectly fine. And I think that happens more than people realize.
I agree. And well, full disclosure, my therapist, which is like somebody my age should have a sentence that starts with that. My therapist, in the beginning of my journey with her, she said, you'll be shocked at how malleable the brain is, and how changeable the brain is, and how you can open different pathways to different different parts of the brain. You can reshape it, and I now am fully believing that. But you can also expand your mind in terms of understanding all of the things that you're introducing in terms of
Mhm.
conversations, because these are things again that people are not like traditionally programmed to have these conversations. I mean, we talk
Yeah.
about ghosts in these very traditional ways, like I said, in the boxes, but we don't think about what if that's just an extension of our reality, of our existence. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that
Right. Right.
it's not just some spooky apparition. It's maybe it's much more than that, tied to consciousness, which is a
Yeah.
crazy thing. But I love that you did that and had those thoughts and then put it down in a way where somebody like me would be like, wow, that's mind blowing.
Thank
But
you.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank
that's
you.
not a question. I guess I just needed to say that
No, no,
because like
no, no, no. I
that's the,
appreciate it.
yeah, I love
This
that part.
that's I think that's the way it has to evolve. I mean, watching paranormal television, because I'm on television and I look for ghosts and I help families. That's one thing,
Yeah.
right? That is, and there's a layer of entertainment in that. Everything that we do on Kindred Spirits specifically, it's exactly as it is. It's exactly as you see it. There it is, and it has creepy music behind it. There's an element of entertainment, but in the reality, in the real world, it's how can we use those things in our everyday lives? And this book is full of advice and ideas on how you can use these things in your everyday life. You don't have to be looking for ghosts actively, working in the paranormal or helping families with haunts to
Right.
understand the reality of the afterlife.
Right. And the more, salacious, exciting, scary, that stuff is really, really fun. Like you said, I mean,
Yeah,
well, it's fun. It's fun in a way where
it's terrifying.
right. My girlfriends and I are always like, we always should do that. We need to do that. And then we're like, I could never do that. I could never do that. But it like, that's as far as my mind has ever gone with this. And I mean,
Yeah.
I confessedly, I didn't believe in ghosts. I never ever
Mm-hmm.
believed in ghosts. I grew up in like all new construction my whole life. I'd never experienced anything. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's ridiculous. And
Yeah.
very, very quickly, I learned my lesson not to think that way, because I was standing in the bathroom of my now ex-husband's very, very old house, and I was doing my eye makeup, duh. And I was looking in the mirror, and I looked up to do my eyeliner, and clear as day, like I said, that door frame, it was closer than
Mm-hmm.
that, but in the reflection, there was a man standing in my then boyfriend's sister's doorway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
standing there. I mean, I was sure he was standing there. I'd never seen him before. He was standing there. And I stopped and I turned and there was no one there. And
Right.
I was sure he was there. And so later, when my ex's sister came home, I said, this is gonna sound crazy, but I swear I saw somebody standing in your door frame, and I think I'm losing my mind. And they'd all talked about this person, Mr. Priest, who maybe they thought lived in the house and blah blah blah. And she's like, oh, that's Mr. Priest. And she asked me to describe him. And sure
Yeah.
enough, he matched exactly with this man who had been standing in her doorway since she was a very little girl. And he would just stand very still and he wouldn't say anything. And he looked exactly like the person I had seen. So I was like,
Wow.
okay. So, but I mean, people, I forget even how I got started on that, but people just they don't believe in ghosts, maybe because they haven't experienced it. But
Mm-hmm.
I just think that I think opening your mind to it can like expand your experiences so
Yeah. I
much.
mean, there's a lot. I mean, I've been doing this for so long, and like people slide in the DMs and they make comments online about just like how uh like it's not real. The ghosts aren't real. Ghosts, you know what? And I, I'm always say to people like, you can believe whatever you want to believe. Like
Mhm.
I'm not here to tell you, but if I think the ghosts are real, who cares
Right.
if I think ghosts are real, right? I'm gonna still go out and I'm gonna still do what I want to do. You don't have to believe in ghosts. And I
Yeah.
think it's so much more fun to exist in a world, especially today and nowadays, when there's so much crazy shit happening in the world.
Mhm.
It's so much fun, more fun to live in a world where there could be spirits and ghosts and magic and I know it's people like, oh, you're just living in a fantasy world, but people have been talking about ghosts and spirits for millions of years. I mean, it's in the actual Bible. If you believe in the Bible, they talk about ghosts, and they talk about psychics, and they talk about all kinds of things. So we've been dealing with this for a very, very long time. And so it is so much more fun to me to live in a world where that exists. Because it also gives us hope that there is something else after this conscious reality. There's something else to look forward to, and that this isn't just it.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
I think that for me, one of the things about that really resonated was my own fear of my own death, but like also, again, giving me some peace when thinking about, my dad in particular who's passed, and my brother. The idea that we know everything, we have all the answers, that anybody can tell you that we've learned everything there is to learn, and that everything is just, again, neatly, compartmentalized into little boxes, and that's all you ever need to know, is very short-sighted. But for others people to say, oh, how, silly of you, or that's not true, or, they can make up whatever they want, but they don't. That's fine. They can think whatever they want. Again, that shouldn't mean that the rest of us shouldn't be curious and tap into, as we were discussing, those other parts of the brain, the other parts of of this entire experience, because we don't know what we don't know by like a factor of 1,000,000, and the brain is limitless, and these experiences are limitless. And we didn't even talk about, the dreams, because that's another thing. Like that was one of the most powerful stories in the book. A young woman was a widower before she was 30, and she talks about her husband coming into her dreams. And that's another one where I really lost it, ugly crying, because it's beautiful. But also, why would anyone say to that young woman, bullshit? No, you didn't have that experience. F you, and F that easing your grief. And why would anyone need to do that?
Yeah, I think people get off on hurting people or being right, or like being right. They have to be right in that, and that's, you don't have to be right about everything, and no one is right about everything. And I think what's interesting to me, like Melissa, she's my childhood friend. We grew up, and when this happened and she told me about it, back when it happened, it's just like, there is no way anyone could sit and listen to her tell this story and look her in the eye and say, that's not real. None of that is true. It was just a dream. Like, there's no way that you can do that. And why would you do that? I go to events all the time, and someone's like, can I show you a picture of a ghost? And the first thing we always say is, if you want it to be a ghost, don't show it to us, because I can absolutely look at a photograph and I can tell you, I can lens flare, I can analyze the photo and it's more 99% of the time it's not a ghost. But if someone comes up to me, and maybe this is a spoiler alert, but if someone comes up to me and says, I think I have a picture of my grandmother who I lost. I was at her house and I took this photo and I think this is hers, and they show it to me, 9 times out of 10 I will look at it and I will be, I see what you see. I see what you see. And I hand it back to them, right? I'm not there to crush that healing that's happening because they think that person is there. Now, if they said to me, what is your real opinion? Like, what's your real opinion? And I'm like, are you sure? Can I please? Then yes. Yeah. But if someone's like wholeheartedly being like, I think my grandmother comes to me in these different ways, I'm not going to sit there and tell them that she doesn't, because who am I? I mean, maybe she is.
Right. And that's the thing too. Again, going back to one of the stories in the book, and I think it's one of the, I'm not going to give it away, but it's maybe at the beginning of the book, after the scary experience, the very, very beginning of the book, where a woman came up to you and kind of like changed your whole perspective. You did not expect what she was going to say, and it made me very emotional. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, she said, I was at one of my first events, and most people, again, they ask, like, what's your scariest experience? What's your favorite episode? And this woman comes up to me after we had all finished, and we were at the Otisaga Hotel in upstate New York. And she says to me, I'm thinking she's going to ask something basic. And she looks me in the eye and she says, I only have a few weeks to live. Can you please tell me how I can communicate with my loved ones after I've gone? And I'm not expecting the question. B, I am seeing someone who is grappling with the end of her life, and she just wants to know how she can communicate with her loved ones. And I had to tell her I don't know, because I
Yeah.
don't know how a ghost does what they do. I have ideas now, but like then I just don't know. And so I was like, I don't know, I'm sorry. And her face didn't change, and she said that's okay. And I said, well, if you find out, can you come back and let me know? And she's like, yes. And I obviously I haven't heard from her, and that's not because she didn't come back or take care of her family. Who am I to her? She owes me nothing, right? Maybe the energy that she wanted to expand in the afterlife is still with her family. She wanted to focus on her family. So, but I think of her all the time, and that was the spark all of those years ago that sort of got me on this journey of this book, Goodbye Hello. Was that it's there's much more to ghosts and to looking for the paranormal, or looking for spirits and studying the paranormal, than sitting in a dark room asking a ghost question on a recorder or having them knock on a wall. There's so much more to it.
Right. And that's the magic of the book, honestly, because you take us on a journey through, you not having these thoughts in the beginning necessarily, and just it's
Mhm.
fun, and you're talking about your career and how, this all came together, and this unlikely like reality that is your life, that you've been doing this
Mhm.
now for so long, and then you look back and you see like maybe the signs were always actually there, because you wanted to be in theater, and this was not at all
Yeah.
something you had anticipated. But you take us on a journey through, not expecting to be doing that, and then doing it in a way that is more transactional. Not to criticize you, because I mean that's how ghost
Mhm.
investigations often are. That's
For
what the
sure.
people
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
And
It's
now,
you do this for me. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's totally transactional.
and
Yeah.
that's right, but largely that's what the viewer wants, because they want to be scared, and they want to, sit on the edge of their seat. But now, in your career and in your life, and applying this to your real life, people you've lost and
Mhm.
friends that have
Mhm.
experienced loss, and taking us on the journey to this conversation now, I think that is really, really special and unique, and very, very powerful and moving and
Thank you.
emotional and thought inspiring and really
Yeah,
thought
and
provoking.
I want to mention this because I think it ties in. Obviously, your followers and those that listen to you, very political, right? Like it's a I follow you online. I see what happens. I see the opinions everyone has. Here is the thing that is crazy about the paranormal community. Um, it is everything that we talk about: grief, death, loss, ghosts. It's universal. I go to paranormal events all the time. I would say that my audience skews more conservative than
Hmm,
liberal.
hmm.
Um, I would not know anyone's political affiliation for an entire weekend at a paranormal event unless they are wearing it on their hat or on
Yeah.
their shirt. It never comes up in conversation ever.
Hmm.
Why? Because we are talking about something that connects everyone universally. There's literally no politics in that. I mean, there's politics in the act of dying, the right to die. There's politics in where to be buried, how to be buried, all of that. But that aside, no one is bringing it up, which is
Mhm.
so crazy to me because there are people that follow me. They know that I'm part of the LGBTQ community. I have a husband, and they are like, "Oh my god, I love ghosts. I love ghosts," and that's all that I talk about. And then one day I'll click on their profile and see, and I'm like, oh, that's who they are, right? Whether on what side or the other, I'm just like, that's the person. And
Mhm.
I would never, you just don't know it in our world because it doesn't come up unless I say something online,
Yeah.
and then they're like, stick to ghost hunting or whatever. But
Yeah.
like, I just find that so fascinating. I find that so fascinating, in a sense that like it's just weird. It's so weird because in a world where that is literally the focus almost all the time, 24/7, it just doesn't happen at places like that. It's bizarre.
Because
Just
at the end of the day, some things are bigger than
yeah,
politics, right? Like we are
yeah.
but like a less than a grain of sand, pen point of in the world and
Yeah.
history.
I
And
mean, our democracy is infant.
right, we're babies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that like I mean, it's very humbling really to have these kinds of conversations, because
Mhm.
like you said, these are things that have been mentioned throughout the history of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, these are
Yeah. Yeah.
conversations that have existed, and these ghost-like beings have been brought up where they were, understood in
forever.
ancient civilizations, right?
Yeah. And so it's just why it's wild, and even when you talk about people who should know better, like they're like, oh, people should know better, and like any intelligent, educated person would know that ghosts, are probably not real. Well, listen, I don't know about who's been in the White House over the years, but like the White House is haunted. There are stories from married Todd Lincoln to Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was a spiritualist. Married Todd Lincoln was into it. Like all of that stuff. The White House is, I mean, White House is haunted more ways than one sometimes, but it's like, but it's that kind of thing where like even really educated people in power can believe in the afterlife and spirits and ghosts and still have, still be respected in the world, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying with that, but anyway, it just makes sense. It's a universal topic. It's something that I think everybody deals with and talks about, and it breaks barriers for sure, because it connects everyone rather than alienates.
But that's the idea too that you talk about a lot, and we'll wrap up with these two kind of concepts, because everyone is connected in these other realms, right? Like in whatever it is that we are fundamentally, like this is a spirituality conversation and a consciousness conversation, but there is an idea and a theme throughout the book where, beyond this realm, we are all interwoven and connected, and then everything happens for a reason. You say that a
Yes.
lot. I could not agree with you more, and I'm late to that epiphany, but can you just talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
too?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think, well, it's tricky. So I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and it may not be the reason you wanted, right? It's not going to be. It couldn't be the outcome that you wanted, or whatever it is. But I like, for instance, I'm sitting here talking to you about ghosts, and how did I get here? I'm like, how did I get not specifically here, but like in this? And I look at the trajectory of my life, and I don't think I had a choice. I think I did certain things, and it just put me in another place, put me another place, put me another place. And I think that's wonderful, right? Like I'm on this ride, and yes, I can control my choices, but I think in the end, the universe is going to show you their true colors, whether you like it or not. It's going to happen, and sometimes it's a bitter pill to swallow. But I do think that there's a reason for everything. For instance, and this is a little spoiler alert for those that have not read the book, but when you get to the dream chapter, um, you're going to understand. And I'm actually adding this to the paperback that comes out next year, this whole story. But in a nutshell, I recorded the audiobook in outside of Boston. They originally wanted me to go to New York and do it, but I live on the Cape, and I was like, in the summer, I can't do it. Right? It's just too much to get off the Cape. It's just going to be traffic.
Yeah.
And so I recorded outside of Boston. And long story short, the guy who was the producer for the audiobook, he went to Berkeley, and I went to the Boston Conservatory around the same time. And Boston Conservatory and Berkeley and Boston shared a lot of the same things.
I went to Emerson.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So we knew sort of the same people. We had the same like weird things about the cafeteria lady or like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we were wrapping up the third day of our audiobook, and he was like, I take the month of August off to be with my kids right before they go back to school, so I'm not going to be able to finish the book for you. And I was like, oh, we're just getting to the dream chapter. There's this crazy story about my friend Yvette, who went to Berkeley, and she had her friend that passed away suddenly. And he looked at me in the I was like, I changed his name, and he looked me in the face, and he said his real name.
Stop it.
He said his real name. And I waited, and I was like, yeah. And he said his real name and then his last real name. And I was like, yeah. And then I started going into the story, and he was like, yeah, I was at the funeral. It was snowing, and we thought it was so weird. Here's the thing. He had this person that died unexpectedly, had two groups of friends, different sets of friends, right? Yvette was part of one set of friends, and Kenny is his name, was part of another set of friends. He did not know Yvette at all, right? He would have never picked up this book because he doesn't believe in ghosts, really. If I wasn't sitting and reading the book to him for 3 days. He would have never heard this story. He would have never known about his friend coming to Yvette and telling him, like, he says to me, he was supposed to play my wedding 2 weeks after he died. He died and then he got married 2 weeks later, and he was supposed to play his wedding. So, like, how universally weird connected is that? Like, when I say we don't have a choice sometimes, that makes no sense to me. And he texted me later that day and he was like, I'm finishing this book with you. I have to, for my friend. I have to. So we set up another thing. We finished the book out. Like, he has the story. I sent him a copy of the book. Like, isn't that blows my mind. And that's not even like a ghost on the other side. Like, you put him in perspective. It puts it in perspective.
Chills. And it confirms one of the things that was so powerful towards the end of the book. One of the things you might have suspected may have been afoot with this particular story and the person that you were talking about in the story that was supposed to play the wedding. One of the things you were sort of musing about was, what if, this person really sort of has this other view of time and space and reality.
Maybe he knew.
Yeah.
Maybe he knew at point that I would be writing a book and that Yvette would tell me the story and it's going to get in the book. Not only, and I what's so crazy is the new chapter that I'm writing that has this complete story in it, I think I start saying, I will never suggest that a spirit in the afterlife has had their grand finale. I think I said it's his grand finale. And I was like, especially when the overture is just beginning. Like, it was literally just starting. Just me putting it in the book was a drop in the bucket of what actually was going to happen. It's wild. So you don't have to believe in ghosts to know that is the craziest synchronicity of all the places I could have recorded, of all the people that could have helped me record the audiobook. It was the person that was connected to one of the people I talk about who died. Like, it's crazy. Who did not know the ins and outs of that story at all.
I mean, like, do all you can to make sense of that, folks, because you can't. Yeah, you can't. And again,
you can't.
Especially because this is the person that you're like, maybe this has got me started on this path.
Yeah.
And like, going way back to, you being a child and hearing the dog, and that gave me the chills.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. That's why I think that, we're all made for a greater purpose.
Yeah.
And we might not figure out what that is, but we keep plugging away, and at some point things like that happen and you go, I'm where I need to be. I'm where I need to be right now.
And we don't need to know all the ins and outs and the whys. And sometimes the perspective and looking back and being like, holy shit, this thing led to this thing. And sometimes we will never know. But I mean, I just love having this kind of a conversation with you because again, these are not traditional ways that people think about things. And that doesn't mean that they're not conversations that should happen. It means that they are conversations that should happen. Because
they are. You should have these conversations, but people are afraid to because they don't want to be looked at like they're crazy. Like, I don't want my friends to think I'm crazy. I had this experience. And so that's why I love the paranormal community. You can sit and you can always talk about your weird experiences that have happened that are so tangible to you, and you can dissect them and figure it out with your friends. Like, it's such a cool community to be a part of. And so I encourage anyone out there who has ever had experiences, want to talk about ghosts, get to an event or find a group chat online that's, healthy. Are there any? And and talk about your experiences. I have this book actually has a Goodbye Hello Facebook page. There's 3,500 people in it, and people talk about their experiences. They talk about the book. They talk about things that connect them to the book. They talk about losing loved ones, and nobody in that. It's a safe space for people to just talk about the weirdest things in terms of grief and death. And it's wonderful. So if you're reading the book or you're going to read the book, please join the group so that you can talk to like-minded individuals.
I'm going to be joining that group because you've sent me down quite the rabbit hole, let me tell you. And I mean, I hear you with the fear about talking about this stuff, but I'll tell you, ever since I told my girlfriends that you were going to be coming on my podcast, we have been talking about ghosts like all the time. They love like true crime stuff, but one of my girlfriends thinks that her grandmother is visiting them sometimes, and she'll send me videos and stuff. I'll be like, oh, yes, look. And so now now we're
Yeah.
all like, we have to go ghost hunting. And
They'll
so
love, listen, they'll, if they haven't watched Kindred Spirits, they'll love it because it's almost like true crime meets paranormal.
yeah.
It's like a melding of both. I mean, we found on an episode, we actually discovered a body in the basement that was buried in the basement of a old Masonic temple. I mean, it's a, you know, it had nothing to do with the Masons clearly, but yeah, a spirit said I was left down here, and we were like, where? In the front, middle, or back? And it's like back. And so we brought in a cadaver dog, and sure enough, the dog hit on one spot. And then we called in the Massachusetts State Police. They brought a cadaver dog. That dog hit on one spot, the same spot. And so they started digging, and they said it was just way old. It was out of the, you know, it's probably like 80 to 100 years old. And so there's really nothing there for them to investigate. But they were like, yeah, you know, of course, the cops downplayed it, like, oh, yeah, these paranormal investigators. I'm like, we were told. How would we know?
How would we know? Yeah,
How would we know?
that's the other thing. And then the story, the story about the person that sort of that you just told the supplemental story to. There's stories that he shares or that no one else would know. That you're like, well, that confirms it. Yeah. I see. I want to know more and more and more. I like this. The fascinating.
Maybe we'll do a part two. You know.
Yes, we need to do a part two because my girlfriends are going to want more, and then know that they're not alone in that. And I want to talk a little bit more about like that political side that doesn't exist because we're all connected, and how that can actually maybe potentially help heal some of the wounds and division in the world right now. Who knows? Wouldn't that be something? Like, hey,
that would be
right.
Great.
Right.
But then what would we talk about at Thanksgiving?
Nobody would be calling me a slut online for defending Stormy Daniels.
I can't. Okay. I can't.
But if Stormy watches this, Stormy, I'm going to tell you right now, this is what you need to do. I want to have a podcast with you coming on, and we're both in lingerie. I'm not fucking kidding. Because they're going to call you a slut for using your body as, you know, the temple that it is to support yourself, and me a slut for supporting you doing that, then we might as well just lean into it. But that said, Adam, I do have
for sure.
Random questions. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'm ready to go. I was going to say Stormy and I have tweeted with each other about ghosts, and if I could find it, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you later. But I know we've talked about ghosts, so I know she's into ghosts.
She's done some ghost hunting. It came up, and it even came up, I think, right? And it came up in her testimony today, which is so surreal. But yeah, nobody's going to haunt her more than the memory of that peen. But anyway, I digress. At least it wasn't a long one. I always end with random questions. I have three quick ones. Yours are obviously ghost themed. If you could pick anyone from the history of time, anyone, infamous, famous, whatever, that you could investigate if they were potentially a ghost and they were haunting somewhere, who would it be and why?
Jesus Christ.
Ooh, that's a good one. Damn.
You know, because then like I've ever heard Margaret Cho say, because he'd be like, that's not what I meant. Like you could literally just find out just from the horse's mouth about all of it.
I don't say anything about abortion, guys.
Yeah, whatever it is, like you literally could just get all of it and be like, oh, cool. That's what he meant. Right. He's actually saying it. But then no one's gonna believe you because they're like, oh, ghosts aren't real. And I'm like, but it's Jesus Christ. And he's like, there he is. You know, I would say Jesus Christ for sure.
Fake Jesus. They're gonna be like, fake Jesus, fake news. But Jesus. Oh my God, please.
Yeah, please
make that happen. Oh my God. Amazing. Okay, second question. Oh, have any of the ghosts you've encountered been like jokers, practical jokers? And they like intentionally mess with you?
Oh, for sure. So a lot of them because they can. They're, you know, they like to play jokes. Like we'll be on one side of the house, they'll go to the other side of the house and then knock, and then we'll follow, and it's almost like we're playing cat and mouse. One time Amy and I were investigating an old barn that used to be like an addiction treatment facility, and we were speaking with a gentleman. I'm assuming he died in the 1970s, but he was a swinger. He wanted a threesome, but not, he literally said it, a three-way, but not with me. Like he wanted, he didn't want a guy, clearly. And I was like, oh, anyway, but that's the kind of not humor, but like that's sort of some of the things that we deal with on the other side, where you're like, oh no, this isn't scary. This is like a real person just being a pervert, or some kid trying to play a practical joke, or he's messing with you. I mean, some spirits do it out of spite, they because they can, and they you get a rise out of it. I don't know why. And it can be scary, but like, yeah, of course they play jokes. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, oh, I would be. Oh my gosh.
All the time.
Oh my, I would be poltergeisting the crap out of that place. Have you ever though, has there ever been one that where you were like, oh fuck no, this is too much. I'm out. Like it's too scary,
Oh, an
too
investigation?
intense. Yeah.
No, and there have been people that I've met, like living people that I've met that I'm like, ugh, I don't want this person in my life. Like they're weird,
Yeah.
but not ghosts. And I say this, uh, the reason why is because as a paranormal investigator, as someone who researches ghosts, we have to put ourselves in positions in order to have the activity happen. So
Right.
if someone says this basement is very scary, I always feel uneasy, we have to go down into the basement. I've sat, in a basement by myself in a chair waiting for something to happen, and it's, it can be terrifying. And I've gotten scratched and pushed and touched and whatever, but I'm not going to run out. And the reason why is because I need to experience the activity to better understand what's actually happening on the home and in the property, to get a reference point.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is real. That you're not imagining it. And people are like, great. Did it happen to you? Awesome. I'm not imagining. I'm like, no, you're not. And now we need to figure out why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So there hasn't really been a time where I physically ran out or wanted to leave. Sometimes you have to sort of take a break from it. But we're there to do a job and to figure out the truth. But people are scarier than ghosts. Trust me.
That's true.
Trust me.
That is true.
Trust me.
When I was in like college, a bunch of kids were like, "Oh, there's this house where the guy could kill his whole family, and it's been in a cornfield, and let's go down there, and it's abandoned, and the wallpaper is all peeling off, and there's blood everywhere." And so we went in, and I was terrified, literally, like terrified. I was like, I can't go any further. And one of the guys went ahead of us, and I don't know if to this day if he was messing with us, but all of a sudden he comes running down the stairs, and he's screaming bloody and murder, and he's like, "Get out, run, run." He's like, we all get in the car, we're like running, screaming. My friend Jackie and I were crying. We're like, what is it doing? I can't ever tell a single soul what I just saw. I will never be able to repeat it. He was like shaking. Like I've never seen anyone shake. I don't know if he was messing with us, but to this day was one of the scariest. It's in like Stillwater, New Jersey. It's like Frieden or Stillwater. It's a house where the guy apparently killed his whole family. I don't know. I'll never, if you're out there, I need to know if that was real or not, if you were just messing with me, because that was so scary. I don't know how you do that.
I mean, listen, if he convinced you that much, he should have been in pictures. He should have been in
That's
pictures.
right. Yeah.
Because that's great acting.
Oh, it was like 5 of us, and we all were like, get in the car. Yeah, we were pinned at a 15. Oh, the last one. Do you get scared by like paranormal movies, like ghost movies? Do those scare you?
I do, yes. Honestly, what's so funny to me is like I have a very hard time sitting and watching horror films if I'm at my house. Like I have to get up and pace, or like even The Last of Us, which everybody was upset. There were times that I have to stand up and like walk around and be like, oh God, like what's happening? Yeah, I jump a lot because that stuff is Hollywood, and it's meant to scare. And so I kind of get really into it. That's why I also love like practical haunted houses, that you can walk through. I love those because, you're meant to get scared. You're supposed to get scared. So yeah, horror movies, psychological thrillers are terrifying. Not necessarily a fan of like slasher, blood and gore horror movies, but to each his own. Halloween, October is all horror movie, freeform. Like I just watch everything I possibly can.
Yeah, and you talk about going to Salem on Halloween. We used to go every October, and we would stay at the Hawthorne Hotel, which
my favorite place.
Yeah, and to talk about that. And I've been to Provincetown many times as well. And my brother-in-law used to live there, and ex-brother-in-law. And that's part 2, because you talk about why Provincetown is so haunted, and that is fascinating.
Well, yeah, and listen, if the next time you're in P-Town, Provincetown, Mass, my friend Kathy Kelly and I are starting our own ghost tour company. So we're doing haunted history tours, and we're doing gravestone tours, and we're doing something called the Paranormal Experience, where you can investigate haunted objects at the workshop. So look us up.
Okay, we're making a trip. Leo, we're going to P-Town this summer, and maybe I can stalk Rachel Maddow because I am obsessed with her. Just a little bit.
I shared a flight, Cape Air flight with her. There's only 7 seats on the Cape Air plane, and our knees were touching. And I was like, the whole time I was like, oh, okay, Rachel Maddow. And then she was going through papers. Like she had a stack of newspapers, then also other papers. And when we got off the plane, I was like, I just have to say, I fucking love you. Like,
Oh my
and I
God.
was like, why did I cuss?
Oh my
But whatever.
God. She would have, I'm sure
She's
she would
doing
have.
she's doing a whole town hall thing. It's sold out. But she's doing a whole town hall thing in May in P Town. Yeah, she's cool. She's around. I see her at the grocery store.
She
Rachel
walked
Maddow
by
buys
us.
orange juice.
Oh my God. She walked by us once on that main, and we were
Yeah, yeah.
heading to a whale tour or something. And my ex sister-in-law and I, like, our jaws just dropped. And I was like, marry
You're
me.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, Rachel Maddow. Anderson Cooper, you'll see him. He's here.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna do some haunting stuff.
That's second. Yes,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
booking it. But this is a kid friendly thing though, right? Like
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
we're doing it.
Yeah. It's family friendly.
I thank you for staying so long. I always say that.
You're welcome.
This was
Listen, no
incredible.
worries.
The book honestly changed my life for real. And changed
Thank
my
you.
perspective on things for real. And I want to have more of these conversations because I just think that I don't think we have them often enough. I don't think we think about these things often enough. And I think that these
Mm-mm.
are the things that tie us together when everything in the world seems to be trying to tear us apart.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate your time.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. My great gratitude to Adam Berry, author of Goodbye, Hello. Please, thank you, hold it up. An incredible book, life-changing book, literally changing, life-changing. Thank you, Adam, for coming on, and everybody have a great week. But really, get the book, read the book, watch the show, watch Kindred Spirits, read the book. You will be so glad you did. Thank you, Adam.